They said even God wasn't on their side. Every single Navy SEAL sniper had failed the impossible shot. Then a woman they laughed at as nothing more than a secretary stepped forward, picked up a dusty old rifle, and in just 3 seconds she erased an entire enemy unit solo. Who was she really? How did she fire 7 perfect shots through chaos no machine could calculate? And why did the SEALs end the day saluting the very person they mocked? This isn't just a story about marksmanship. It's about the hidden power of a simple woman who rewrote the rules of war. Stick around, because by the end, you'll know why the military tried to bury her legend and why we're bringing it back. You're watching A Simple Woman's Story. Subscribe now, hit the bell, and never miss the truth they don't want you to hear. They said even God wasn't on their side. Every Navy SEAL sniper had failed, their commander barking that the wind itself had become the enemy. Then, in that silence of defeat, a woman they dismissed as nothing more. Then a clipboard-carrying administrator stepped forward, lifted a rifle older than most of the men standing there, and in just 3 seconds she did what a team of elite warriors couldn't. 7 shots, 7 impossible hits. Who was she? How did she read chaos itself like a map only she could see? And why, by the end of that day, did hardened SEALs find themselves saluting the very woman they had mocked as a relic? The Coronado firing range shimmered under the California sun, heat waves bending the air above the sand-colored earth. On that afternoon, the place felt less like a training ground and more like an arena, the kind where arrogance strutted center stage. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Mercer had claimed that stage, his voice loud, his confidence unshakable. He lectured with the tone of a man who knew he was admired, surrounded by a circle of young candidates who hung on his every word. And at the edge of that circle stood Clara Whitmore, 46 years old, her uniform hanging loose as though borrowed, streaks of grey threaded through her hair. To Mercer and his men, she was nothing, just a paper pusher sent to sign off ammunition logs. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't one of them. She was an intruder in their temple, tolerated only because the rules said she had to be. Mercer tossed her a spotting scope, deliberately careless. "Try not to drop it, Grandma." Laughter erupted, a pack of wolves howling at the scent of weakness. Clara caught the scope without a flinch, steady hands absorbing the weight like it was an extension of her. She said nothing, no retort, no anger, just silence. But Master Sergeant Daniel Hayes, a man who had seen enough combat to recognize habits buried beneath disguise, narrowed his eyes. He noticed the subtle way Clara's feet set into the earth, evenly balanced, recoil-ready. He noticed how her fingers adjusted the focus knob, not like someone guessing, but like someone confirming. She wasn't fumbling with unfamiliar equipment. She was remembering an old friend. Mercer carried on, oblivious. He strutted in front of the targets downrange, a simulated village, peppered with steel silhouettes, rooftop guards, hidden shooters. He spoke about wind shear, Coriolis effect, spindrift. His tone that of a priest reciting sacred mysteries. "This isn't something you learn from a book," he declared, gesturing mockingly toward Clara. "This takes talent, instinct." His men nodded, eager to belong, eager to laugh at the joke she represented. Clara tuned it all out. She had long ago learned the discipline of silence, the ability to close herself off from noise and ego. The range blurred, her focus narrowed to the horizon, to the subtle language of the world. Dust devils twisted near the ridgeline. A thin flag in the distance rippled with a rhythm most eyes would miss. The shimmer of heat above the sand revealed invisible currents. She read it all without effort, as naturally as breathing. Her father's voice echoed in memory. Colonel Thomas Whitmore had drilled it into her when she was still a girl. Don't fight the wind, listen to it. It's telling you where the bullet wants to go. All you have to do is follow. He had raised her not just as a daughter, but as an heir, forging her into something the world wouldn't expect until it was too late. He once told her, "They'll underestimate you because you're a woman. That will be your advantage. Don't correct them. Not until they're already in your sights." Mercer's lecture wound down with a smirk. "Gentlemen, today you face the ghost scenario. Hardest test you'll ever see. Wind like this makes it impossible. Targets hidden in overlapping fire lanes. No one clears it. Not without divine help." His words drew another round of laughter, the kind that builds walls of exclusion. Then the shooting began. One by one, the SEAL candidates lined up, calculating, adjusting, firing, and one by one they failed. The wind tore bullets from their path, gusts betraying their mathematics. Shots that looked perfect through scopes missed steel by yards. The high-value target at the heart of the mock village stood untouched, a smug monument to their failure. Mercer's fury erupted. He slammed his logbook into the dirt, cursing the equipment, cursing the conditions, cursing everything but himself. Around him, his men lowered rifles, frustration darkening their faces. The laughter was gone, replaced by the heavy silence of failure. Through it all, Clara stood quiet. Holding the scope Mercer had tossed at her like trash. Hayes caught her profile and felt something stir in his memory. Whispers from deployments past. Rumors of an unseen guardian who turned battles by a single shot. A phantom marksman some had called a ghost. Looking at Clara now, he wondered if those whispers had been about her. The silence deepened, pressing heavy on everyone. That was when Colonel James Callahan stepped forward. He wasn't a man of theatrics, but his presence alone carried weight. His gaze swept the dejected men before settling on Clara, who remained motionless, unreadable. "Chief," Callahan said, his voice calm but carrying. "Feel like showing these boys how the old guard gets it done?" The words dropped like a stone into still water. Mercer blinked, then scoffed, trying to laugh it off, but the colonel's eyes never left Clara. She didn't smile. She didn't hesitate. She gave a single nod, measured and final. "Yes, sir." Clara didn't move straight for the gleaming carbon fiber rifles lined up neatly on the tables. Instead, she walked past them toward a weathered Pelican case resting at the edge. Of the line, a case so ordinary no one had paid it any attention all day. She crouched, unclasped the latches, and revealed what lay inside. The rifle was old, its metal worn, its stock scarred with years of use. An M210, a weapon most of the young SEALs regarded as obsolete. A relic from another era. A murmur rippled through the group, half laughter, half disbelief. Mercer couldn't resist. "Really, that museum piece? Chief, if you wanted to embarrass yourself, you could have just asked for a typewriter instead." More chuckles erupted, nervous this time, but Clara ignored them. She lifted the rifle with reverence, assembling it with a rhythm too fluid to be rehearsed. Every motion spoke of thousands of repetitions. The weapon didn't look outdated in her hands. It looked inevitable. She didn't reach for the digital wind meters, the kestrels the SEALs had obsessed over all afternoon. Instead, she plucked a single blade of dry grass from the ground, held it up, and released it. The wind caught it, tossed it, dragged it. She watched it fall, her expression unreadable, as if the world had whispered something only she could hear. Then she lay prone, her body melting into the earth, the rifle an extension of her frame. The silence thickened. Mercer folded his arms, smug certainty etched on his face. Hayes, though, felt his pulse quicken. He knew this kind of stillness. He'd seen it once before, long ago, in a different desert, when death had been moments away, and in that silence Clara's mind drifted back. She was 17 again, lying on a ridge in Iraq, the sun hammering the rocks around her, the Remington M24 cradled in her hands. The convoy below had been ambushed, machine gun fire shredding the air, RPGs screaming across the sand. She remembered seeing Lieutenant Daniel Hayes, then barely older than her, blood seeping from his leg, pinned down and shouting orders. Her instructions had been clear: observe only, report only. But she'd seen the way the enemy was maneuvering. the way they intended to finish the Americans in minutes, not 20. Her father's voice filled her head. Find the space between heartbeats. Don't look at the man. Look at the wind, the earth, the distance. See the bullet's path before it leaves the barrel. 870 yards, 12 hostiles, crosswind gusting at 12 meters per second. She dialed her scope, exhaled, and squeezed. One by one, 5 men had dropped, each round snapping into place as if the air itself carried her will. When she found the leader with the red keffiyeh, she'd known it was over. The bullet had taken 1.2 seconds to arrive, but in her mind it was instantaneous, inevitable. By the time the quick reaction force reached the convoy, the survivors whispered about a guardian angel. Official reports called it luck. Her father called it destiny. Back on the Coronado Range, Clara blinked once, the memory receding. Her breathing slowed until it was almost imperceptible. The wind gusted across the field, mocking the SEALs' earlier attempts, but Clara didn't fight it. She listened. She became part of it. Seconds stretched. Mercer smirked, tapping his watch. Any day now, Chief. And then, without warning, the rifle spoke. 7 shots. Not a staggered volley, not a frantic scramble, a controlled storm, so rapid they sounded almost like one long tear in the fabric of air. Thump, 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 thump. The range erupted in metallic pings. Through scopes and binoculars, the impossible unfolded. The high-value target dropped. His rooftop guards collapsed. A moving vehicle screeched to a halt. Its driver struck through the windshield. A hidden sniper, one no candidate had even spotted, slumped in his perch. An antenna shattered. A mock explosive on the roof detonated in a puff of red smoke. 3 seconds. An entire enemy command structure annihilated. No one spoke. The silence was absolute, broken only by the faint wind. Mercer's jaw sagged open, disbelief etched across his face. No way. That's not possible. Nobody shoots like that. Colonel Callahan stepped forward, his boots crunching softly on the gravel. His eyes held no surprise, only confirmation. He placed a heavy hand on Mercer's shoulder, and the young officer flinched as if struck. "Lieutenant," Callahan said quietly, "you're about to learn a very important lesson about assumptions." He turned to his aide. "Pull up Chief Whitmore's file. Read it. The unclassified portions." The aide's hands trembled slightly as he manipulated his tablet. His voice wavered at first, then grew stronger. Name, Clara Whitmore. Rank, Chief Warrant Officer 5. Unit, classified. Formally attached to Joint Special Operations Command Task Force. He swallowed. Combat deployment 17. Combat hours, over 4,000. Specialty, Special Operations Target Interdiction, High-Angle Marksmanship Instructor, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. The SEALs shifted uneasily. Dev Group, SEAL Team 6, the apex predators of their world. The aide continued, his voice cracking. Awards, Silver Star. 2 Bronze Stars with Valor. Distinguished Service Cross. His eyes widened. Note, holder of the standing record for the longest confirmed kinetic strike in a combat zone. Distance, classified. A weight fell over the group, crushing arrogance, rearranging reality. Callahan's voice cut through the silence like steel. The reason you failed this course is because Chief Whitmore designed it 10 years ago. She wrote the book. She chose this firing point, this season, these wins, to teach you to see beyond numbers and devices, to teach you the art, not just the science. He gestured toward the battered M210, resting quietly now. That rifle? That's the same one she used in the Hindu Kush Mountains to dismantle a command cell from over 2,200 meters away. To you, it's obsolete. To her, it's an extension of will. Then the colonel did something none of them expected. He straightened, heels together, and gave Clara a slow, deliberate salute. Not the perfunctory courtesy of rank. The deep, reverent salute reserved for heroes. Hayes snapped to attention beside him, his own hand rising in a sharp gesture of respect. One by one, the younger seals followed, their earlier laughter burned away by awe and shame. They saluted not a clerk, not an administrator, but a ghost standing in flesh before them. The legend began spreading before the echo of her shots had faded. Texts fired across barracks, whispers carried through fire bases, retold in bars where operators gathered. The story of the ghost of Coronado, a warning born in Mercer's humiliation. Don't get Whitmore. The next morning, before dawn, Mercer stood outside Clara's office, his uniform perfect, his posture rigid. The swagger was gone, replaced by something quieter. When Clara emerged at precisely 0500, he didn't block her path with arrogance. He stood at attention and gave a crisp salute. "Chief Whitmore," he said, voice steady but stripped of pride. "I owe you an apology for my words, for my attitude, for not recognizing who stood before me. And I ask for your mentorship. Teach me." Clara studied him, her face unreadable in the grey light. Then she nodded once. "Be on the range at 0530. Bring nothing but your ears. You're going to learn how to listen to the wind." By the time Mercer arrived, Clara was already kneeling beside a weathered canvas bag. She wasn't in administrative khaki, but in faded desert camouflage, boots worn from years of use. Without looking up, she said, "Leave your rifle in its case." Mercer frowned. "With all due respect, Chief, if we're not shooting, what are we doing? Learning to listen." She held out a blindfold. "Put this on." For a moment, Mercer's old pride flared. The idea of standing blindfolded in front of his men, it was almost unbearable. But Clara's tone allowed no room for ego. "Yesterday, you failed because you trusted your devices more than yourself. Your kestrel told you the wind at your position was east to west at 14 miles per hour. And you believed it, but 200 yards downrange, it swirled clockwise. At 500, it reversed with thermal currents. At 800, it formed a micro-vortex, shifting every 8 seconds. You adjusted for one truth when there were 4. Mercer hesitated, then tied the blindfold over his eyes. "The world went dark." Clara circled him slowly. "What do you feel?" "The wind's from the west," he said. "Obvious," Clara replied. "What else?" Minutes passed. Slowly, painfully, Mercer began to notice subtleties he'd never considered. The way the breeze carried moisture differently across grass than over sand. The faint temperature shift that brushed his skin before a gust arrived. The pitch of the wind's hum as it threaded through steel frames and canvas targets, creating an audio map of the range. Hours later, when the blindfold came off, Mercer blinked at the world as if seeing it for the first time. Clara handed him a canteen. "Your devices measure 1 point in space. A bullet crosses thousands. Don't let technology rob you of instinct." Mercer nodded, sweat streaking his face. "My father used to say something similar. Vietnam, 3rd Marines, said you had to feel the jungle, not just see it." His voice cracked slightly. "He died last year." Clara's gaze softened for the first time. "I'm sorry for your loss. He wouldn't have made the mistakes I made yesterday," Mercer admitted quietly. "No," Clara agreed. "He wouldn't have, but he had to learn once too." She slung her rifle case over her shoulder. "Same time tomorrow. This time bring your weapon. Let's see if you can apply what you've started to learn." By the 3rd day, Mercer's pride had been stripped to its foundation. The blindfold drills had shaken him, but what came next nearly broke him. Clara had them on the range at 0400. The California dawn still a grey whisper over the hills. The air was colder, sharper, carrying with it the shifting microcurrents of a coastline waking up. Targets glimmered faintly in the pre-dawn haze, some set at impossible distances, others barely visible through the layers of fog. Mercer lay prone, his custom-built rifle hugging his shoulder, every fiber of his body tense. He tried to recall Clara's words, "Don't fight the wind. Listen, feel, become part of it." But each time he thought he had found its rhythm, a gust tore through and ruined the shot. His rounds clanged off steel in erratic failures. Around him, the other candidates fared no better. The ghost scenario, as Clara had designed it, was proving merciless. She didn't scold. She didn't gloat. She only observed, kneeling silently, her eyes distant, as though she were elsewhere entirely. And in her silence, Mercer began to understand she was waiting, not for them to shoot, but for them to fail. Failure, she believed, was the true beginning of learning. Hours later, as the sun climbed higher and the wind became a living, breathing adversary, Clara finally stepped forward. She carried the old M210 again, its weight casual in her arms. Without ceremony, she lay down, adjusted the scope, and stilled herself against the earth. Mercer watched, his heart pounding, remembering the day before when she had annihilated the targets in seconds. But today the conditions were worse. A roaring, invisible storm. Surely even she couldn't. The first shot cracked, slicing the air like thunder. A steel silhouette toppled, another shot followed, then another, each punctuating the range with finality. Within seconds, the impossible had become inevitable again. Every target she touched fell, no matter the distance, no matter the wind. Her cadence wasn't frantic. It was patient, fluid, inevitable. By the time she set the rifle aside, the silence was deafening once more. Mercer whispered without meaning to, "How?" Clara sat up, brushing dust from her sleeve. "You were all looking at numbers. I was looking at the spaces between them." Later that night, Mercer found himself restless, his pride twisted into something else. Admiration, yes, but also frustration. He wanted to know more. He wanted to understand who she really was. So he sought her out in the mess hall, where she sat alone with a cup of black coffee, her files neatly stacked beside her. "Chief," he began, his tone stripped of bravado. "How many times have you done something like that? Saved a team with nothing but wind and instinct?" Clara's gaze lifted slowly. Her eyes were calm, unreadable. Enough times to know the cost of every trigger pull. It wasn't the answer he wanted, but it silenced him more effectively than any reprimand. He sat across from her anyway, studying the lines of her face, the faint scars that told stories she'd never speak. It was Hayes who broke the tension, sliding into a chair beside them with the ease of a man who had earned the right. He set his tray down, leaned forward and said, "Fallujah. April 04, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. We were pinned down in a courtyard, 3 angles of fire on us. Suicide bomber moving in from the east alley. We had no line of sight, no chance." Clara's hand stilled on her coffee mug, though her expression didn't change. Hayes continued, his voice dropping. Then a shot came, 1 bullet, through 3 walls, hit the bastard center mass, detonated his vest before he could reach us, saved my entire squad. He studied her eyes. The report said it was luck, but I knew better. I knew there wasn't a Marine alive in that city who could have made that shot. The whispers said it was Ghost 7. I never thought I'd be sitting across from her in a mess hall. Mercer's eyes widened, snapping to Clara. "Ghost 7? That's you?" Clara didn't confirm. She didn't deny. She simply took another sip of her coffee. The silence between them said everything. The revelation rippled through Mercer's chest like a shockwave. He thought he had begun to understand her. He hadn't scratched the surface. The following day brought the final humiliation for the sniper candidates. One by one, each team attempted the ghost scenario again, and one by one, they failed. Targets stood untouched, the wind mocking every calculation. Mercer tried, desperate to prove himself, but when his final round clanged off steel, he lowered his rifle with shaking hands. "God's not on our side," he muttered bitterly. The range fell quiet. Then, from the observation tower, Colonel Callahan's voice boomed. "The exercise is a failure." Mercer's anger flared, his voice sharp. "No one can shoot in this wind. It's impossible. Maybe Chief Whitmore should file a weather complaint." The colonel's eyes turned cold. He ignored Mercer and walked straight to Clara. "Chief," he said quietly, but everyone heard. Feel like showing them what impossible looks like. Clara rose. She didn't reach for the modern rifles. She returned again to her old case, assembling the M210 with deliberate grace. She lay prone, still, silent. The candidates snickered nervously. Mercer folded his arms, waiting for her failure. And then the storm began. 7 shots ripped the air, a seamless sequence too fast to follow. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then, in the distance, 7 distinct chimes. Tink, 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 tink. Through the scopes, the impossible unfolded again. The high-value target down. Guards down. Vehicle disabled. Hidden sniper eliminated. Comms antenna shattered. Explosive detonated. An entire enemy unit erased in under 3 seconds. The range erupted in silence. Mercer's face drained of color. That's not possible. Callahan stepped forward, his voice dangerously calm. Lieutenant, the reason this course is impossible for you is because Chief Whitmore designed it. 10 years ago, she wrote the book you're trying to pass. She chose this time, this place, these winds, to teach you the art beyond the science. The aide read aloud from her file again, his voice trembling. 17 deployments, 4,000 combat hours, Dev Group Instructor, Silver Star, Distinguished Service Cross, holder of the longest confirmed strike in combat, distance classified. The truth crashed over the group like a tidal wave. Arrogance dissolved into awe, then shame. Callahan turned, snapped a slow, deliberate salute to Clara. Hayes followed, and then, one by one, every candidate raised their hands, saluting the ghost who had stood in their midst. Mercer's knees felt weak. His pride collapsed. He saw her not as an administrator, not as a relic, but as a legend who had carried more ghosts than any of them could imagine. But Clara wasn't smiling. She was already breaking down her rifle, each motion methodical, her face unreadable. That night, Mercer stood outside her office again, the salt air heavy with fog. He waited until she appeared, then snapped to attention. No excuses, no justifications. Chief Whitmore, I was wrong about everything. I disrespected you, disrespected your service. I'm asking, please, teach me, make me better. She studied him in silence, then gave a single nod. Be on the range at 0400, and be ready to listen to the wind. The following morning, Mercer was already on the range when Clara arrived, his rifle cased, his expression hard with determination. He didn't crack jokes, he didn't smirk. He waited. Clara nodded, acknowledging his effort, then gestured to a patch of bare earth. Lie down. He obeyed. The other candidates watched from a distance, curious, whispering, but none dared interrupt. Clara stood over Mercer, arms folded. You've been relying on instruments your whole career. Today you're going to let go. She handed him a blindfold. Mercer hesitated only a moment before tying it around his eyes. Darkness swallowed him, the world stripped down to sound and sensation. Clara crouched beside him. What do you feel? Wind from the west, he answered quickly. That's obvious. Go deeper. Mercer strained. At first there was nothing but air against his face. Then, subtly, the moisture shifted. The breeze felt drier across his left cheek, heavier across his right. He swallowed. Humidity's uneven. Good, Clara murmured. What else? Minutes passed. He began to notice the faint change in pitch as the wind threaded through distant antennas. He could hear the difference between gusts rushing over sandbags and those brushing canvas. He could almost map it in his head, a living river of air. Finally, Clara pulled the blindfold free. Now shoot! Mercer's hands shook as he chambered a round. He steadied himself, aimed, exhaled. The wind pushed, twisted, lied, but he remembered the music of it, the chorus of currents. He adjusted not by instrument, but by instinct. He fired. The target clanged, a clean hit. His relief burst out as laughter, ragged and raw. Clara gave only the faintest nod. Once, she said. Now do it again. For hours, Mercer trained under her gaze, learning to abandon the crutch of devices, to merge with the air itself. By the end, his shoulders sagged with exhaustion, but when he struck the final target, he knew something had changed. Clara had given him the first step into a world he'd never known existed. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Mercer approached Clara in the mess hall once more. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Why not any of the others?" She studied him for a long moment, then said, "Because you broke, and only when something breaks can it be reshaped." Hayes, sitting nearby, chuckled softly. "She's right, kid. You think any of us learned by winning? No. You learn when you're bleeding, when you're beaten, when you're humiliated. That's when you pay attention." Mercer nodded slowly, the truth settling deep. But Clara's journey wasn't finished. A week later, Colonel Callahan summoned her into his office. The blinds were drawn, the air heavy with secrecy. He slid a thin folder across the desk. On its cover, a single word: Valkyrie. Clara froze. The name was a relic of her past, a program whispered about but buried long ago. Callahan's voice was low. "There are forces outside this base taking an interest in you, Chief. That display on the range, it didn't just impress these men, it sent ripples." Clara flipped the folder open. Photographs, reports, redacted pages, but one image stopped her cold. Her father, Colonel Thomas Whitmore, standing with a group of women. In combat fatigues, decades younger, the word Valkyrie stenciled faintly on a wall behind them. Her chest tightened. She whispered, "You shouldn't have this." Callahan leaned back. "Maybe not, but someone does. And they're looking for you." The revelation cracked open a chamber of memories she had locked away. The years of secret training, the experiments in marksmanship beyond the accepted science, the whispered directive that women could be shaped into weapons underestimated by every enemy. Valkyrie hadn't been just a program, it had been her origin, and now someone wanted it back. That night, Clara stood alone on the range, staring into the darkness. The wind pressed against her face, carrying with it the weight of secrets and the inevitability of ghosts. Mercer approached quietly, hesitant. "Chief?" She turned, her face unreadable. "Mercer, you ever wonder why legends get buried?" He frowned. "Because they scare people?" "Exactly," she said. "Sometimes the truth is too sharp, too dangerous. So they bury it, but the ground never holds forever." Before he could answer, the sound of rotor blades thundered overhead. A helicopter descended onto the pad near the barracks, its searchlight slicing the night. An officer stepped out, carrying a sealed envelope. He walked straight to Clara, saluted and handed it over. The words on the envelope were stamped in stark black, "Mission classified." Mercer glanced at her, wide-eyed. "They're sending you out?" Clara tucked the envelope under her arm, her expression calm, almost resigned. They always do when they've run out of options. She started walking toward the chopper. Hayes appeared, falling into step beside her. "You going back into the shadows, Ghost?" he asked quietly. Clara's eyes fixed on the horizon. "Ghosts never really leave. We just wait for the right wind." The blades roared louder, the night trembling around them. Mercer watched, torn between awe and dread, knowing he'd witnessed something that would haunt him forever. Clara Whitmore, once mocked, dismissed, forgotten, was a legend stepping back into the storm. And as the helicopter lifted off, the whispers began again. The ghost of Coronado, a name that spread like fire through the ranks, through the bases, through the bars where warriors traded stories. Some dismissed it as myth, others swore it was real, but all of them agreed on one thing: don't get Whitmore. The screen fades to black, leaving only the echo of rotor blades and the lingering question: if one woman could change the course of a battle with nothing but instinct and an old rifle, what else might she do when the world tried to bury her story? And that's how the ghost of Coronado walked back into the shadows, leaving behind not just awe, but a warning etched into every soldier who witnessed her. Some say she was a myth, others swear she was real, But whether legend or truth, one fact remains: when everything seemed impossible, she carried the weight alone and won. Thank you for watching this story. If Clara Whitmore's journey left you with chills, let us know your thoughts below. Do you believe legends like hers should stay buried, or do they deserve to be told to the world? Your comments mean more than you know, and we read every single one. Make sure you subscribe to A Simple Woman's Stories and ring the bell so you never miss the next tale of courage and defiance. And don't go anywhere. On the screen right now are more incredible stories waiting for you. Pick one, dive in, and keep the journey going.